Hello, John.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
And you too?
Um, may I ask you, and I ask you to introduce yourself, and ask the first question basically would be about your past, about your theatrical and art past.
Yeah, well, it goes back a long time, obviously. I started off being interested in writing, creative writing, novels, short stories, and then I graduated into theatre. I began as a playwright, and was writing my own plays. I then got interested in adapting novels, classic novels. I went through a period where I was doing that, and then, as often happens, if you stand too near a vacuum, you fall into the vacuum. And I began as a writer, and then I got into stage management, I got into directing, I got into producing, and that career has spanned 20 years plus, with many plays on in London, touring Ireland, touring England, doing work with young children, with old people, people in prisons, people, young people at risk, a whole wide range of different theatre, different forms. But I think sort of 20 years ago, I really went into the theatre full time, and that's where I am now.
Oh, quite interesting history, big one, I must admit. You mentioned prison and children. There must be totally different one, no?
I've done work with young people at risk, and young people not in prison itself, but in secure establishments, and you can sort of see a line where if they are disadvantaged and don't get any chances, then the next step is going to be prison. There is a line between that, and I suppose with regards to Gruntlers, I think there's a clear line between using theatre to work on the outskirts, on the fringes, not so much sort of catering for the middle class people who would go to theatre anyway, but to try and reach people who wouldn't, or reach people who are outside the norm. We have a fairly cute expression that we deliver theatre to non-theatre audiences and non-theatre spaces, which kind of like covers a whole wide range of different aspects. So we'll play anywhere. The first play that I saw was a brand new play staged in a hall, and you get the feeling that it's a play that counts, it's the writing that counts, it's the acting that counts. The dressing behind it is not so important, and using that as a basic grounding, you then get to be interested in all sorts of theatre, which may be hard to reach. There's now an expression where we have to work towards hard to reach groups, and that informs. And there's an airplane just crossing over now, so we'll wait until that goes. But reaching hard to reach groups is kind of important, and reaching hard to reach work, which I think is where Gruntlers come in, because you specialise as a company in a wide range of art, and a wide range of making that art accessible, which kind of like fits in with my ethos as well. I'm very pleased to be associated with Gruntlers in the way I am, because I think our core values are the same anyway, bringing theatre, bringing art to people who wouldn't normally get access to that theatre or that art. And now the wind is now blowing.
Anyway.
Press on.
Anyway, how you joined, or how you heard, and what was the start with the Grunter Theatre connection?
I met David. As simple as that. I met David. A lot of activity in this field comes through chance meetings. You meet somebody by chance, and one thing leads on to to one thing, and David talked about his company, and I talked about my company, and we established common ground. Even though both companies are quite different, the core values aren't. They're the same. And if you break down any good theatre practice, you'll find that performance and expression and connecting with the audience in a real way, as opposed through a digital way or through Facebook or Twitter, which is seemingly personal, but it's not personal because there's nobody at the end of it. There's just fingers on a keypad. Whereas theatre is real, and theatre also has a long history of being able to change. It can't change governments, it can't bring down nations, but it can change thoughts and minds. And one of the reasons why in countries which suppress its artists, it jails its poets and tortures its playwrights. And the reason why it does that is because poets and playwrights and writers have a power that authorities often fear. So in terms of the modern world, I think the poet's voice is as important as ever. The playwright's voice is as important as ever, despite all the high-tech Facebook and Twitter sort of generation. And it's usually plays and film and poetry and writing that unsettle authorities, and that's a good thing because that's what it's there for.
I see, but we have also the film nowadays, and it's really common and usual to take a look at films. I believe you have been making a choice between film or theatre, or why have you chosen exactly the theatre?
Because the theatre is instant and it's inexpensive and it talks directly to an audience, whereas film takes a comparatively long time. I know technology is making film a lot easier, but it's through the camera. The camera is the block between the expression and the audience, and although there are many films that change the world, it's not my thing. You can't do everything, and there's much more theatre I want to explore before I start going into other art forms. And I just feel theatre is much more immediate. And from a personal point of view, I don't really want to spend all day sitting around in a studio waiting for the sun to shine or waiting for the planes not to fly over. I'd rather sort of work with people on a stage and then directly bring that work to people in the audience.
What are you currently working on?
Because I do everything in the theatre apart from act, and even then I've done a bit of acting, but not much to speak of. I'm working on a project. I just finished a project about the history of the building of the Regent's Canal through London. That's drawing to a close. I'm stage managing a play which is touring around the Midlands, which is an interactive play. It's an improvised interactive play where the audience are asked to make a decision about some controversy, and that's very interesting because the audience then start arguing and they start believing that the issue in the play is real, and they really sort of argue with the actors and argue with the directors. That's going on, and I'm doing a play in Belfast later on, which is about a strike and about a factory occupation by the workers, which is quite unusual because in this day and age, you would think that kind of play properly belongs to the 50s and the 60s, and here we are, 2012, performing a play about the workers taking over the factory, and it's a very socialist play, and socialism is not a word that one hears much of nowadays. So that's a big project that's coming up, and a few more projects in the pipeline.
Do you want to change the future?
Do I want to change the future? I think for most of us, we want to understand the future or understand the present in order to make sense of the future. I think to change it is impossible, but to make sense of it and to make sense of where you fit it into that future, I think there's a lot of the work I do and a lot of work artists do is based in the past. You know, we look at the past to try and get a hint as to where we are now, and with that in place, we can then get a sense of where we are in the future. So I don't think it would be very pretentious to think you can change the future, but for an artist, just trying to understand where you are now and where you're heading is maybe enough to achieve. I think if you set out to topple nations, you know, what do you do once that nation has been toppled? It's just been replaced by a second nation that needs toppling. So just being able to express, I think is the most important thing, really.
Oh, I see. Well, I guess then I have to thank you for this nice interview.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Good
have
luck,
a nice.
good luck with the film.
Good luck. Thank you.